It was a chilly evening in Detroit, the kind of night where the wind nipped at your skin and the streets seemed a little too quiet. Claire Dawson stood on the edge of her cramped apartment, looking out at the city she'd grown so tired of. At 28, life had already taken her through more than most people experienced in a lifetime. Widowed, abandoned, and now a single mother to a 4-year-old boy, Aiden, Claire had learned to fight for everything she had. Every day felt like a battle. Every morning at 6 a.m., Claire would kiss Aiden's forehead, her heart breaking as she left him in his daycare center. Then, she'd head to her first job, working in a factory that churned out parts for electronics. By noon, she would race across town to work at a small diner, barely making enough tips to cover the bills. Her third job, cleaning offices in a high-rise downtown, was the only one that gave her a glimmer of hope, only because it paid well enough to keep her afloat. But it was also where everything changed. Her life, like everyone else's, was defined by routine. But that day, as she stepped into the elevator of the Romano building for the evening shift, something felt different. Claire wasn't sure why, but she could sense a shift in the air, as if something, or someone, was about to enter her life in a way she hadn't expected. She had heard of Vincent Romano, the elusive CEO of the company she worked for. Most of the employees feared him, not just for his power, but for his reputation. It wasn't uncommon for people to whisper about him in hushed tones. They said he was untouchable, dangerous even. But Claire had always kept her head down, focusing on her son and the work she needed to do. She never imagined her path would cross with his. That evening, as Claire cleaned the executive offices, the sound of heavy footsteps approached. She froze, recognizing the distinct sound. It was him, Vincent Romano. He was tall, his figure filling the doorway as he entered the room, his eyes narrowing as they locked onto hers. Claire's heart raced in her chest. "You're still here?" His voice was low, commanding, and unexpected. Claire swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. "I was just finishing up, Mr. Romano," she said softly, not daring to meet his eyes for long. Vincent's gaze lingered on her, an intensity that made her skin crawl and her heart pound. "I need to speak with you before you leave," he said, his voice softer now, but with an edge that suggested she had no choice. Claire had no idea what he wanted. She only knew one thing for sure. Whatever this conversation was about, it wouldn't be simple. But what could she do? She had no choice but to follow him down the hallway, her mind racing. What did he want from her? What would she say? As they reached the office, Vincent closed the door behind them. The tension in the air was thick, and Claire felt like she was on the edge of a cliff, ready to fall at any moment. She was sure this was the moment her life would change forever, but she had no idea how. "I've noticed you," he began, his eyes scanning her face carefully. "I know the kind of work you do. I also know that you're not like the others." Claire wasn't sure what he meant, but she stayed quiet, letting him continue. "You work hard," he said, his voice suddenly softer. "You do whatever it takes for your family, and I respect that. But you're smarter than you let on. More resourceful than anyone in this building gives you credit for." Claire felt a mixture of pride and unease. She had worked so hard to stay invisible, to keep her head down, but here was Vincent Romano, the one man everyone feared, telling her he noticed her. That scared her more than anything. "You could be more than this," he continued, leaning against the desk, his eyes locking onto hers. "You could have a life beyond this. But first, you need to trust me." Claire's heart skipped a beat. She wanted to say something, to refuse, but her throat went dry. This wasn't the first time someone had offered her something better, only to betray her in the end. Yet, something about Vincent's presence, something in the way he looked at her, made her wonder if this time, maybe it could be different. But before she could say anything, the sharp sound of a knock on the office door interrupted them. The knock was quick and insistent, too hurried for anyone to have a real reason for interrupting. "Come in," Vincent's voice was firm, though his eyes remained fixed on Claire. A young man stepped in, looking flustered, his face pale. He was one of the security guards from downstairs. "Mr. Romano, there's a situation. A group of men are looking for you. They said they're from the Torino family." Vincent's expression hardened instantly. His eyes shifted from the guard to Claire, the brief flicker of concern replaced by the same deadly calm she had heard in his voice earlier. "You need to go," Vincent said, his voice now carrying an air of finality. "Get out of here before it gets worse." Claire didn't know what to think. One moment, she was alone with him in his office, and the next, she was being sent away because of something involving the Torino family. It didn't make sense. But one thing was clear, her life was about to take a turn, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. As she left the office, she could feel Vincent's gaze on her back. A mix of fear and curiosity took hold of her. What was he really involved in? And why had he started showing interest in her now? But as she walked out of the building and into the cool night air, Claire couldn't help but feel that her world was already changing, and that she had just stepped into something far bigger than she could imagine. The following days passed in a blur for Claire. Her thoughts were consumed by the brief exchange with Vincent, and more than that, by the warning he'd given her. She found herself asking the same question over and over again. What did Vincent Romano want with her? Was he truly interested in helping her, or was this just another game in a world she had no business being part of? Despite her inner turmoil, life for Claire went on. She still had to balance her jobs, pick up Aiden from daycare, and face the harsh reality of living paycheck to paycheck. But the constant nagging in her mind wouldn't go away. She couldn't ignore the way Vincent's eyes had looked at her, like he saw something no one else did. It wasn't long before Vincent made another move. He began requesting Claire for specific tasks, things that no one else could do. At first, it seemed harmless. She was asked to prepare reports that only senior staff had access to, and occasionally, she was asked to stay late to assist with projects that had a direct connection to the company's most important dealings. Claire had no choice but to comply. With every task he assigned her, a new layer of curiosity formed. What was he seeing in her that no one else seemed to notice? And why was she so willing to trust him, even though everything about him screamed danger? One late afternoon, Claire was in the company's boardroom, organizing some files when she noticed someone standing at the door. She froze. It was Vincent. He stepped in, his expression unreadable, but his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "You've been working hard," he said, his voice soft, but it carried a weight Claire couldn't ignore. "I'm just doing my job, Mr. Romano," Claire replied, trying to sound unaffected, though her heart raced at the proximity between them. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming, and for a moment, Claire forgot how to breathe. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. It was as if everything around them had disappeared, leaving just the two of them in the silence that stretched on longer than it should have. "I know you have a lot of questions," Vincent said, breaking the silence. "And I'm sure you're wondering why I'm doing this, why I'm paying so much attention to you. The truth is, I see something in you, Claire. Something different. You've survived, even when the odds were against you. You've kept fighting, even when everyone else would have given up." Claire was caught off guard by his words. She hadn't expected him to be so direct. She had always thought of him as the kind of man who would keep his distance, who would never reveal what was really going on beneath the surface. But here he was, standing right in front of her, showing her a side of himself she hadn't expected. "I don't need saving, Mr. Romano," Claire said quietly, her voice firm. "I've been doing just fine on my own." Vincent's eyes softened for a brief moment, but only for a second. He was quick to return to his usual demeanor. "I'm not here to save you, Claire. I'm here to offer you a choice." She raised an eyebrow, unsure of what he meant. "A choice?" Vincent nodded, his jaw tightening. "I can see the life you've built for yourself. You've worked hard to get here, but you're always one step away from losing everything. The Torino family, they don't play fair. If they know what's happening here, what I'm trying to protect, they'll come for you too. You won't be able to escape them." Claire felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "What are you talking about? I don't want anything to do with this. I don't want to be a part of whatever world you're in." Vincent stepped even closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "But you already are, Claire. You've been in it ever since you walked into this building. You're already too close to everything. You can either keep running, stay in your little bubble and hope nothing happens, or you can trust me. Let me protect you. Let me protect Aiden. Let me keep you safe from the dangers that are coming." Claire felt a wave of panic. She wanted to refuse, wanted to walk out of the room and never look back, but something in Vincent's eyes made her hesitate. He wasn't just talking about business. He was talking about her life. A life that, in some strange way, had become intertwined with his. You think I can just step into your world? You think I can live in that kind of danger? Claire's voice wavered slightly, though she hated herself for it. She had never been this afraid before. Vincent's expression didn't change, but there was something in his gaze, something deep and calculating. I know you can handle it. I know because you've been handling things on your own for years. But I can give you a choice, Claire. A chance to stop running, a chance to stand with someone who can protect you. Someone who knows how to fight. She took a step back, her mind racing. She didn't want to be a part of this world. She didn't want to get involved in whatever dangerous game Vincent was playing. But as she stood there, looking into his eyes, a part of her couldn't help but wonder if he was right. Could she continue running forever? Or was it time to face the world head-on? I'll think about it, she finally said, though she knew deep down that she was already too far in to back out now. Vincent gave her a small nod, his lips curling into a half-smile. Take your time, Claire. But remember, there's no such thing as safety in this world. Not unless you fight for it. With that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving Claire standing there with a choice to make. Her heart raced as she realized that her life had just become more complicated than she ever imagined. The following days felt like a blur for Claire. Each moment seemed to stretch endlessly, and every time she looked over her shoulder, she half expected to see someone watching her. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life, once simple and controlled, was now spiraling into a world that was both thrilling and terrifying. Vincent's words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of the choice she had yet to make. She continued to go through the motions of her daily life, working her 3 jobs and taking care of Aiden, but her thoughts were consumed by the conversation she'd had with Vincent. The man was dangerous, no doubt. But there was something about the way he spoke to her, something that pulled her in despite everything. The promises he made were hard to ignore. Protection. Safety. A life that was different from the one she was living now. But that world, the world Vincent inhabited, was not a place she was prepared to enter. It was a world filled with secrets, with shadows lurking just outside the light. And yet, the more Claire thought about it, the more she realized that she had already been thrust into it. She had already crossed a line the moment Vincent had spoken to her. There was no going back. One afternoon, as she was finishing up her shift cleaning the corporate offices, Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at it and saw a message from an unknown number. Her heart skipped a beat when she read the message. Meet me at the alley behind the diner at 8 p.m. We need to talk. There was no name, no context, just the simple instruction. Claire didn't even have to guess who it was from. She knew it was Vincent. As the hours passed, her anxiety grew. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to that message. What did Vincent want to talk about? Was it another warning? Or was he going to ask her to take the next step, to join him in his dangerous world? By the time the clock struck 8 p.m., Claire found herself standing at the back of the diner, her breath visible in the cool night air. She glanced around, feeling more exposed than ever. The alley was dimly lit, the faint glow of a streetlight casting long shadows across the ground. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Vincent, his silhouette emerging from the darkness. He looked different tonight. His usual crisp suit was replaced with a dark jacket and jeans, a sign that whatever this meeting was, it wasn't just a casual conversation. You came, Vincent said, his voice low, almost amused. Claire didn't know whether to be relieved or frightened by the way he spoke. What do you want, Vincent? She asked, her voice shaking more than she intended. I told you before, he replied, stepping closer. I want to protect you. I want to make sure you and your son are safe. But I can't do that if you don't trust me. Claire took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I don't trust anyone, she said, though she knew that wasn't entirely true. And I don't belong in your world. Vincent's eyes softened, but his expression remained serious. You think you don't, but you already are. The choices you make, the things you do to survive, it's all connected. You're already deeper in this than you think. A chill ran down Claire's spine. She had always kept to herself, always stayed away from the dangerous world that Vincent represented. But now, the more she thought about it, the more she realized that Vincent was right. She had been caught up in something far beyond her control. And if she didn't take action, if she didn't make a choice soon, it would consume her. "I'm offering you a way out," Vincent continued, his voice steady. "But it's not without risks. If you stay, you'll be safe. If you leave, you'll be exposed to things you can't even imagine." Claire felt a wave of fear and uncertainty wash over her. She had never been a part of anything like this before, and the idea of stepping into a world that was so dangerous made her feel like she was losing herself. But at the same time, there was a part of her that was tired of living in constant fear, tired of the uncertainty that hung over her every day. "I don't want to be a part of your world," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But I don't want my son to be a target either. I won't risk his life." Vincent's expression softened even further, and he took a step closer to her, his presence overwhelming. "I understand that. That's why I'm here. You don't have to face this alone. I can help you, Claire. Let me help you protect your son." Claire looked up at him, meeting his gaze. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but there was something else there too, something dark, something dangerous. It was a part of him that she didn't fully understand, a part of him that scared her, but also drew her in. "I'm not asking you to join me in this life, Claire," Vincent said quietly. "I'm asking you to trust me. Let me keep you safe." For the first time, Claire felt the weight of the decision she had to make. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't keep running forever. The danger was too close now. It had already found her. "I'll trust you," Claire said, her voice barely audible. "But I need to know that my son will always be safe." Vincent nodded, his expression resolute. "I swear it. No one will hurt you. Not as long as I'm around." As he turned to leave, Claire stood there in the alley, feeling a mix of fear and relief. She had just made a choice that would change her life forever. There was no turning back now. The following days passed in a blur for Claire. She had agreed to trust Vincent, to let him protect her and Aiden. But now that she had made that choice, she felt like she was stepping deeper into a world that was far from the simple, modest life she had once known. Vincent kept his word. Every day, he ensured her safety, whether it was sending someone to check on her apartment or making sure she had a car to drive to work. It was a strange feeling, knowing that someone, especially someone like Vincent, was watching over her, but there was no denying the relief she felt. Aiden was safe, and for the first time in months, Claire could sleep at night without constantly looking over her shoulder. But as much as Vincent's protection brought her peace, it also brought something else, an unspoken tension between them. Every time they saw each other, there was an air of something more, something deeper than just business. It was a connection that neither of them acknowledged aloud, but it was there, always lingering. The way he would glance at her when he thought she wasn't looking, the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, it all felt too personal. Claire tried to ignore it, to focus on her son and her new reality, but the more she pushed it away, the harder it became to deny. One evening, as Claire was finishing up at the diner, her phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. "Meet me at the warehouse on 5th and Main at 9 p.m. Don't bring anyone. V." The message was brief, but it was enough to send a chill down her spine. A part of her wanted to ignore it, to tell herself that it was nothing, but deep down, she knew that wasn't an option. Vincent had never been someone to send a text unless it was important. When Claire arrived at the warehouse, the silence of the night felt oppressive. The large building stood in the middle of a deserted industrial district, its windows dark and its walls crumbling with age. She parked her car and stepped out into the cold night, her heart racing in anticipation. As she approached the entrance, a shadow stepped out from behind the corner of the building. It was Vincent. He was wearing a dark suit, his expression unreadable, but his eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. "You came," he said quietly, his voice low and steady, but there was something in the way he spoke that made her nervous. "I got your message," Claire replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "What's going on? Why did you want to meet here?" Vincent took a step closer, his eyes scanning the area behind her before meeting her gaze once again. "There's a situation," he said, his tone serious. "The Torino family has been making moves. They're looking for weaknesses, looking for cracks in the foundation." Claire felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The Torino family was the same group that had threatened Vincent weeks ago. She knew they were dangerous, but she had no idea just how far they would go to get what they wanted. "What does this have to do with me?" Claire asked, her voice trembling slightly despite herself. Vincent's gaze softened, but there was no mistaking the urgency in his voice. "You're involved now, whether you like it or not. I've kept you out of it, kept you safe for as long as I could. But the truth is, the more you're around me, the more danger you're in. They know about you, Claire. They know about Aiden." Claire's heart skipped a beat at the mention of her son. She had tried so hard to protect him from the shadows of her life, but now those shadows were closing in. "I've done everything I could to keep you out of harm's way," Vincent continued, his tone almost pleading. "But I can't protect you forever if you don't trust me. I need to know you're willing to accept the help I'm offering. You're in this now, Claire, and there's no turning back." She swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. She had already crossed a line by trusting Vincent, but now it felt like she was being dragged deeper into a world of violence and danger, one she didn't fully understand. "I'm not ready for this," Claire said, shaking her head. "I never wanted any of this. I just wanted to keep Aiden safe." Vincent stepped closer, his voice soft but firm. "I know, but you don't have a choice anymore. The Torino family doesn't care about your safety. They care about power. And if you stay in my world, you'll always be a target. You'll always be in danger." Claire felt tears prick the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Then what am I supposed to do? What happens now?" Vincent paused, his eyes searching hers, as if looking for something. "Now you stay with me. You let me protect you. And together, we fight back. We show them that they can't just take whatever they want." For a moment, everything was silent. Claire looked at Vincent, seeing him in a new light. He wasn't just the cold, powerful man she had first met. He was someone who was willing to risk everything to protect her and her son, even if it meant stepping into the fire with him. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was soft, almost tender. "I know, and I'm scared too. But we don't have to face this alone. Not anymore." Claire took a deep breath, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. She didn't know if she was making the right choice, but one thing was certain, she was no longer in control of her life. Vincent had pulled her into his world, and now there was no going back. "Okay," she said, her voice shaky but resolute. "I'll trust you. But you have to promise me one thing. Promise me that you'll keep Aiden safe." Vincent nodded, his expression serious. "I swear it. Aiden's as important to me as you are." As the night stretched on, Claire realized that her life would never be the same again. The world she had once known was slipping away, replaced by a reality filled with danger, secrets, and a man who seemed determined to pull her into the chaos. But for better or worse, she had made her choice. And now, she had to live with the consequences. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity, and Claire found herself in a constant state of unease. The world she had known, the world of quiet routines, the small joys with Aiden, the familiar discomfort of working 3 jobs, felt like a distant memory. Now, her life was defined by the shadow of the Torino family, the looming threat that hung over her and Vincent, and the growing complexity of her feelings for him. Vincent was everywhere, in ways that both reassured and unsettled her. He had assigned a small team of trusted associates to keep an eye on her, men who shadowed her during the day, ensuring her safety without her even knowing it. She didn't know whether to be grateful or horrified by the constant surveillance, but it was clear that Vincent was taking no chances. His protective nature, which she had once found endearing, now felt suffocating. Yet, despite the heaviness of her new reality, Claire couldn't help but feel a strange sense of security when she was with Vincent. In the moments they shared alone, when the world outside seemed to disappear, he was different. He was no longer the cold, calculating businessman or the ruthless leader of a criminal empire. He was a man who cared in his own way, a man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, but was willing to share that burden with her. One afternoon, after Claire had finished her shift at the diner, Vincent called her and asked her to meet him at a private location. It was an unfamiliar part of town, far from the familiar streets she had navigated for years. When she arrived, she was surprised to find herself outside a luxurious penthouse, one that looked out over the entire city. It was a far cry from the cramped apartment she had been living in, and the stark contrast left her feeling uneasy. "Come on in," Vincent's voice came from the intercom, calm as ever. Claire hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The penthouse was everything she had imagined, sleek, modern, and full of expensive taste. Everything about the space screamed wealth and power. But as she walked through the rooms, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. There was no warmth here, no sense of life beyond the opulence. It was as if the place was built to impress, not to live in. Vincent greeted her as she entered, dressed in a casual black shirt and jeans, a far cry from the suit he usually wore. His eyes softened when he saw her, and for a brief moment, he looked like the man Claire had come to know in fleeting moments, vulnerable even. "I wanted you to see this," he said quietly, motioning for her to sit on the couch. Claire sat, but the unease in her chest grew stronger. "Why am I here, Vincent? What's going on?" Vincent took a seat beside her, his posture relaxed but his expression intense. "The Torino family, they've started making moves against me. I've been preparing for it, but things are escalating faster than I expected. I wanted to show you this, so you understand why I'm doing this, why I'm so determined to keep you safe." He pulled out a folder from the coffee table and slid it across to her. Inside were photos, disturbing, threatening photos of her and Aiden. Claire's heart dropped as she flipped through them. There were pictures of her leaving work, of Aiden at daycare, and even some taken from her apartment window, showing their every move. "Is this why you've been watching me?" Claire's voice shook with a mixture of fear and anger. Vincent didn't flinch. "Yes. They've been watching you, waiting for the right moment to strike. And I can't afford to let that happen." Claire felt her stomach turn as she stared at the photos. She had always known that her connection to Vincent would put her at risk, but seeing the tangible evidence of that danger made it all the more real. "You promised me safety," she said, her voice strained. "But this isn't safety. It's control. You've brought me into your world, and now I'm a part of it whether I want to be or not." Vincent's gaze softened, and he placed a hand on hers. "I'm sorry, Claire, but I won't let them hurt you. I can't. I made a promise to you and Aiden, and I intend to keep it. But you need to trust me. If you don't, they'll have the upper hand." Claire pulled her hand away from his, standing up and pacing around the room. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this." Her voice cracked as the weight of everything they were facing settled on her shoulders. "I know you didn't," Vincent replied, his voice steady but tinged with regret. "And I never wanted you to be a part of this. But it's too late now. You're already in this world. Whether you like it or not, you've been marked." Claire stopped in her tracks, turning to face him. "So, what now? What happens to us? To me?" Vincent stood up, walking over to her. His eyes searched hers as if trying to gauge her next move. "Now we fight back. We don't let them win. I need you to trust me, Claire. This will be over soon. And when it is, you and Aiden will be safe. But we have to do this my way. There's no other option." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Claire felt a storm of emotions raging inside her: fear, anger, confusion. But there was one thing she knew for sure: she couldn't go back to the life she had before. The world she had entered was too dangerous to leave, and Vincent, for all his flaws and contradictions, was the only one who could protect her now. "I don't know if I can keep doing this, Vincent," Claire whispered, her voice breaking. He stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone. I'm with you. And we'll make it through this together. Trust me." Claire met his gaze, feeling the weight of his promise settle in her chest. She didn't know if she could trust him completely. But one thing was clear: She had no choice but to move forward. In this world, survival was the only thing that mattered, and the only way to survive was to stick together. With a heavy heart, Claire nodded. I'll trust you. Vincent's expression softened, relief flooding his features. Thank you. As the night wore on, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the battle was just beginning. But for the first time in weeks, she felt like she wasn't alone in it. And that, she realized, was worth more than anything.